My name is Tori Afton. I'm 43 years old, and for most of my life I believed I understood exactly where I stood in my family. I was the extra chair, the one that didn't quite match the table. The one people adjusted around but never truly made space for. This past Thanksgiving, I brought a guest to my parents' house, a man my family had spent 38 years pretending didn't exist. And when he stood up and said his name, everything shattered. My mother dropped her wine glass. The sound cut through the room like something breaking that had been under pressure for decades. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth, blooming outward in a stain no one moved to stop. 20 relatives sat frozen. And my father leaned toward me and whispered 4 words that confirmed everything I had begun to suspect. How did you find him? Not who is this, not what's going on. How? Because he already knew, and that moment didn't just expose a secret, it rewrote my entire life. Before I take you into that Thanksgiving, you need to understand what it looked like growing up in the Afton house, because nothing about that day made sense without the pattern that came before it. For 30 years, Thanksgiving followed the same script. Every November, I drove 2 hours from Columbus to my parents' colonial house in the suburbs. I always arrived early, not because I was eager. Because I was expected. My mother, Diane, would already have a list waiting, carry in the folding tables, polish the silver, set the centerpiece. Wipe down every chair in the dining room, 14 of them heavy oak cushioned seats. Then she would gesture toward the kitchen. You're in there, Tori. Same as always, the children's table wasn't even really a table. It was a plastic folding setup squeezed between the refrigerator and the back door. That's where I sat every year. With kids between 6 and 12 years old while the adults ate 10 feet away in the dining room, I told myself I didn't mind. I told everyone I preferred it, but that wasn't true. It was just easier than asking why. Last Thanksgiving, before everything changed, I carried the turkey platter into the dining room and set it in front of Frank. He didn't even look at me. Cheryl, my younger sister, was already seated at his right. My mother sat on his left. Cheryl's chair had a cushion, no one else's did. I went back to the kitchen and sat down between my 7-year-old nephew and a stack of paper napkins. From the dining room, I heard the clink of a glass. Frank stood. I want to make a toast, he said to Cheryl, my one true pride. Applause followed, laughter. Someone said, here, here. I kept my eyes on my plate and cut turkey for my nephew like I hadn't heard a word, because I had heard it all before. Different milestones, same toast. Same warmth in his voice, a warmth that had never once been directed at me, but that night something changed. After the toast, Frank didn't sit down. He stayed standing, gripping the back of his chair, looking around the table. While we're all here, he said, I want to make something official. The room quieted, not shocked, uncomfortable. When the time comes, he continued, this house goes to Cheryl. She's my real flesh and blood. Everything I built is for her. Real flesh and blood. Those words didn't land like a figure of speech. They landed like a boundary line, a declaration, a truth spoken out loud that everyone else seemed to already understand. I stood in the kitchen doorway holding a sponge. No one looked at me. Not Frank, not my mother, not Cheryl, who smiled softly and squeezed his hand, and in that moment something inside me shifted, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my doctor's office in Columbus. Routine blood work had come back with elevated markers, possible signs of a hereditary heart condition. Any family history? The doctor asked, so I called my mother. Mom, does anyone on Dad's side have heart issues? Silence, not thinking, holding. Our family doesn't have health problems, she said sharply. You're fine. Mom, the doctor needs. I said don't worry about it. Click, she hung up over a medical question. The next day I told my colleague Margaret. She didn't hesitate, take a DNA test. I ordered one that afternoon, swabbed my cheek, mailed it, forgot about it, until a Tuesday in late October. I was sitting in my car eating a sandwich when my phone buzzed. Your DNA results are ready. I opened the report, read the first line, read it again, then I called Margaret. Frank isn't my father. The results were clear, 0 genetic connection to the Afton family. Instead, at the top of my matches, R. Harlan, probable first-degree relative. I stared at the screen for a long time, then I started searching. Robert Harlan, Dayton, Ohio, a retired carpenter, 68 years old, 70 miles away. I called my mother. Who is Robert Harlan? 8 seconds of silence. I counted them. That name has nothing to do with you, she said. Don't ever bring it up again. My heart started racing. Mom, my DNA test says, those tests are wrong. You're imagining things. Your father is Frank. End of conversation. Click, that was the moment I knew, not suspected. Knew. Something had been buried, and I was done pretending I didn't see the ground shifting beneath my feet. A few nights later, I found a photograph. I was 3 years old, sitting on the lap of a man I didn't recognize. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, T&R, Easter 86, R. Robert, I drove to Dayton that Saturday. 70 miles of silence and second-guessing, but when he opened the door, everything fell into place in a way I can't fully explain. He looked at me for 5 seconds. Then he said, "You look just like your grandmother, Vivian." He didn't ask who I was, he knew. Inside his house, he showed me a wooden box. Inside were 15 letters, 15 birthday cards. All addressed to me, all returned to sender in my mother's handwriting. He never stopped trying for 15 years until he believed I had chosen silence. I didn't go home that day, not really. Because the person I thought I was no longer existed. Instead, I drove straight to my mother's house the following week and laid everything out. DNA results, letters, photograph, she denied it. Deflected, threatened, then blocked my number. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to stay quiet. I wasn't going to keep sitting at the children's table. And I wasn't going to let them control the story anymore, so I called Robert and I asked him one question. "Will you come to Thanksgiving with me?" Thanksgiving morning, I picked him up. He was standing on his porch in a navy jacket, holding that wooden box, like a man carrying proof of a life no one had let him live. We drove in silence, parked 2 blocks away. Walked up to the house together, and when the door opened, everything changed. You already know how that part went. The wine glass, the silence, the truth finally spoken out loud. "My name is Robert Harlan and Torre is my daughter," and just like that the lie collapsed. What followed wasn't shouting, it wasn't chaos, it was something quieter, more devastating. Truth moving through a room where everyone had built their comfort on something false. My mother tried to rewrite it, said he left, said he didn't want me, but the letters were there, the handwriting. The evidence, and for the first time in my life, people looked at me differently, not as the problem, but as the person who had been wronged. I didn't scream, I didn't argue. I just said what needed to be said. I'm 43 years old, and I deserve to sit next to my father at least once in my life. Then I set a boundary, clear, final. I will not sit at any table where my existence is treated as the problem. And then I left with my father for the first time. The weeks after that weren't easy. Truth doesn't fix things overnight. It breaks them first, then it shows you what's real. Cheryl reached out, she didn't defend herself, she didn't deny anything, she just said, "I didn't know and I'm sorry." We met, we talked. And for the first time in our lives, we spoke as equals, not roles, not labels, just sisters. My mother sent emails, at first defensive, then softer, then quiet. One day she called, left a voicemail. "I'm not calling to defend myself," she said. "I just want to talk when you're ready." I listened to it 3 times and I didn't call back, not yet. Because for the first time in my life, the decision was mine. Now I spend my weekends in Dayton, in a small house that smells like sawdust and cedar, learning how to sand wood. Listening to stories about a grandmother I never met, sitting at a table where no one tells me where I belong because I already know. I received my first birthday card from my father this year. 43 years late, but right on time. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's this: you can spend your entire life trying to earn a place somewhere that was never built for you. Or you can stand up, walk away, and build your own table. So let me ask you something. If you were me, if your mother called after everything, would you call her back or would you wait? Type call or wait in the comments. I want to hear what you do. And if this story stayed with you, if it felt a little too familiar, make sure you're here for the next one. Because some stories don't just get told, they get reclaimed.